Hello, everybody. This is Ed from The Morning Goals. I hope you guys are all doing well. Today is a super exciting day. This is the start of a new 5-week series on turning negatives into positives. For those of you who don't know me, I am a master coach and a business professional. I'm a consultant, a coach, an entrepreneur, an author, and I am here to talk a little bit about the topic of today is our fears. So a lot of us, when we kind of think about our lives, or actually let's take a pause. Let's go back and think about something that scared you or something that you were fearful about that prevented you from moving forward. Maybe it prevented you from something in your life, happiness, a new job, going on vacation, trying something new. So all of those things are fear, right? We have our fear. And so today's topic is harnessing that fear and converting it into something positive. So as I said before, the theme for the next 5 weeks is converting our fear into something positive. Okay, so I want to share a little bit of story, a little personal story. I actually had a brother who passed away in 2008, and I'm working on a book project to honor him, but he was scared. He had made a bad decision in his life. He got sick, and he chose not to get medical help. He chose to die because he was fearful and scared of what people were going to think. He was scared and fearful of talking to us and his friends about what was happening in his life, and he chose to die. That's what I tell people, that he was so scared of what might have happened, what could have happened, what people might have said, and chose not to seek help. It's something that could have been managed or assisted with, and he didn't come to me. We were very close in our family. He didn't come to his best friends who he saw on a regular basis. He didn't go to his colleagues, and he kept in this fear, this thing that was eating him up inside for probably about 8 or 9 years until he passed away. How scary is that? And how lonely is that, right? So I think all of us have experienced some type of fear that is so scary it prevents us from doing something. For example, fear in a relationship. We all know whether we should be in a relationship or not. And you know, deep down inside, I was actually doing a podcast interview with one of my guests in my podcast very early on in the podcast. And she said, once you get into a relationship, you already know deep down inside if it's good or not. You already know deep down inside if it's going to work or not. And then what happens is we go through the motions over and over again. And then we get scared of being by ourselves. We get scared of having that conversation, that uncomfortable conversation. And then 1 year, 2 years, 3 years goes by, 12 years goes by, and that fear has prevented you from living your truth or living your life, okay? When it comes to work, a lot of us are, when our professions, our jobs, we have all experienced fear. Fear that's so debilitating that we get scared on Monday to go to work because we haven't had a conversation with our bosses or our colleagues to discuss things that are happening in our lives or the work environment or our mental health. And then people become so miserable that they become sick. And then that fear is compounded and affects them personally, emotionally, and even professionally as we continue this cycle of allowing this fear to take over us. And lastly, I use the example of travel and adventure. We have all experienced different types of fear of going into a foreign country. If you travel abroad, if you're local and here in the US, fear of trying something new, going to a different restaurant because you might not fit in, going to an expensive restaurant and saying, oh, they might judge me, right? The fear of judgment, the fear of not knowing how to do something, the fear of communication. Those are things that people experience on a regular basis in their normal lives, right? Outside of work. And how we harness that fear and use it will define who we are. So what I always say is, let's think about those things that make us scared, that we're scared about, or we have been compounding over and over, year after year, and think about how you can change that mentality, that mindset, or actually act on that fear. In coaching, one of the things that we do is we ask you open-ended questions and we guide you down different paths. So ask yourself, what if I had this conversation? What might that person say? Now, if they say something good that I didn't expect, how would I respond? If they say something negative or shut me down, is that a bad thing? Right? Because now you know what they're thinking and how they feel, and how they might react in future situations. Is that a bad thing? What if you opened that door to a new job? What would that look like? How would that feel? How scary would it be if you started applying for jobs? You don't have to say you don't have to say yes to a job or a job offer, but you can start that process. And so, in business coaching or career coaching, something that comes up is, I want a new job. And my reaction is always, well, apply for one. And then I hear clients say, well, I'm not sure what I want to apply for. Well, that's okay. But if you don't start applying because your fear is preventing you from applying, you might not know what's available for you. Nobody might call you in the first week or 2 weeks, right? And so the sooner you get started and you overcome that fear, the sooner then you understand or you start the process of change or positivity or finding that new job. So I always think about people who in my life were fearless. So as many of you know, I was raised in in extreme poverty in rural Texas. So my education and how I ate and what I ate was very limited outside of the home. So when I would go to restaurants for the first time as a high schooler or even college, I would get nervous. I didn't know how to use chopsticks. I didn't know how to, could I use my hand to eat crispy bacon? Literally, that sounds very silly, but those were things that sort of crept up in my mind. Are they going to make fun of me? And I remember my first job out of college, I was actually traveling with my boss, who's a millionaire. And we're running in Geneva, Switzerland. And if anybody who's been to Europe, Geneva, Switzerland's a beautiful city on a lake, and it surrounds the lake. And we were running and we were sweating. And all of a sudden, he stops and goes, "Oh, this restaurant is my favorite restaurant for oysters." And I remember fear came over me because, one, I had never eaten oysters. And I remember this moment. And two, I remember telling him, "Mitchell, we are sweaty and you're shirtless." He had a shirt in his back pocket that we were running because it was hot out. And I said, "That looks like a very expensive and fancy restaurant." And he looked at me, and this is a fearless guy, an example that I use of fearlessness in a silly situation, but it affected me. And I still remember it to this day, and I'm almost 40. He goes, "Ed, listen, all those people want is your money. So if you can pay for those oysters, then how you dressed shouldn't matter. And if it does, then you don't need to eat there." We went in, we got oysters. They were delicious and amazing and fresh and very expensive, but nobody judged us on how we looked. So that fear in my mind was actually worse than what actually happened. And what actually happened was a great experience. And I learned about oysters, and I went back for several years afterwards as I was traveling back and forth from the US to Europe for work. So sometimes you are the fear that you have in your head of what might happen is actually way scarier and way worse of what might happen if you actually proceed with whatever is scaring you. So I always say, number one, think of fearlessness. So I oftentimes, and I actually quit that job 3 or 4 years after that, I actually think about Mitchell as one of my fearless role models. And you know what? If this place is judging me, then they don't deserve my money. If this place is judging me, I don't want their food, right? Now that's taking the high road. With jobs, I tell all of my clients, apply for as many jobs as you can, and you always can say no. What is stopping you? If you already have your resume, if you're already have applied for some jobs before, apply. Talk to somebody on the phone. Get your interview skills. Worst case scenario is they say no. Worst case scenario is they never call you back. Best case scenario is you talk to somebody, you hone in your interviewing skills, you know your value, and then you know what? If that value that they're giving to you in the form of a salary doesn't match your expectations, you can say, sorry, no. You can tell them no, right? And then in business, and this is sort of the last thing I'll talk about, is the fear of making money. I honestly think a lot of us are scared to make money. We prevent ourselves. We have all these ideas, okay? We have ideas to start businesses. We have ideas to do art and crafts and sell them in different places. We have ideas to buy and sell houses, right? I'm pretty sure most people who are going to be watching this have thought about owning property, and they watch HGTV, they look on the internet, on Zillow and Trulia and Redfin, and then they don't do anything, right? Because there's a fear of judgment. What if I fail, right? What if people make fun of me, right? So what I tell everybody is all of these ideas of starting a business, usually for most of my clients, they are stopping themselves. Nobody else is stopping them. 0 people except themselves, because they are in their head creating scenarios that do not exist. So there are many forms of fear, and it's what I call auto fear. You are creating this for yourself. So number one, if you have experienced fear, debilitating fear, right? Number one, think of the positives. That's your first thing. Think of the positives. What are the amazing things that could happen from this situation? Think of the positives. Number two, think of it as an adventure. Think of it as something fun and cool and an awesome experience. Give it a try. Who knows, right? Who knows? Number three, I always say when you're scared of something, think of Mitchell. Who in your life do you admire and is fearless in certain circumstances? So think about that person and harness that energy, right? And that's a great way for all of us to sort of imitate and do things in various ways, right? So enhance those things. So we all experience fear. I come off as a very confident person. I say that all the time, but I am scared shitless. And so excuse the language, but I have fear. I am scared of what people might say. And the last parting words that I want to give you today is have the audacity, right? Go bold, go big. And if you are not in trouble, then you are not trying hard enough. Okay. So have the audacity. So tomorrow when you wake up, say, you know what? I'm going to have the audacity to talk to my boss. I'm going to have the audacity to ask for more money. I'm going to have the audacity to show my art on the internet. I'm going to have the audacity to put myself out there and be vulnerable, right? So say that, write 4 or 5 statements of I am going to have the audacity to, or and make it positive, right? Make it positive. So as we continue on over the next few weeks, We're going to take different aspects, negative aspects in our life, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can change them into positives. So for fear, something we all experience, take it, spin it, think of the positives. Number two, harness that energy from maybe somebody who you admire or somebody you consider fearless. And then number three, think about doing it and putting yourself out there and having the audacity, right? Have the audacity to do amazing things. So for those of you who are interested in business coaching, go visit, or life coaching. I'm both a business coach and a life coach. We can talk about these fears. We can talk through different scenarios of things that are preventing you from moving forward in your life, that fear or things that you are scared of that maybe you're not sharing with people and maybe you should. You can visit me at themorninggoals.com. That is themorninggoals.com. And I do a free discovery call, and that's about 30 minutes of you talking with me on Zoom. We have our cameras on purpose so that we can see each other and talk to each other in a safe space for you to share. So with that, have the audacity to conquer your fears, have the audacity to do amazing things. You already have the power within you. And with that, have no fear. Thank you very much. And I will see you next week.